When you'd think of budget, you'd think of cheap, poorly made, and basically serving the purpose of something you can use without the fear of being broken or lost. Budget things often many have compromises for it to achieve such a low cost, which, expectedly, lowers its overall quality. The same is to be said for audio. People don't really rave about budget audio equipment as, oftentimes, it serves as a beater or temporary gear until one can obtain their dream gear. But as of recently, this has not been the case. Moondrop Aria broke into the scene with its somewhat matured Harmon-like tuning for $79 in 2021. Then, many followed suit, like the T3 Plus, Duno Titan S, and the $20 monsters being the 7Hz Zero and Moondrop True. The latter being known to give many sub $50 and, to an extent, sub $100 IEMs a run for their money. This then begs the question, with one of the most competitive segments in audio, saturated with many amazing choices, how can one even top the high bar that the competition has set? Well, this is how. I'm OB from OB Audio. Let's talk about the TangZu Wan'er. Before I start, I just want to say thank you so much to TangZu Audio and Sir Ken Alfonso for providing the Wan'er free of charge. But I assure you that this will not affect my view on the IEM itself, and I will be 100% honest with my thoughts on the Wan'er. TangZu Wan'er SG, also known as the Shangguan Wan'er. TangZu's third release, excluding the U-only when they were still known as T-Force, and their cheapest offering yet, is also TangZu's entry to the $20 IEM segment that is currently being dominated by the likes of the Solnote Zero and Moondrop True. But before we get to the units themselves, let's take a look at the unboxing experience. The box is larger than your usual KZs with a rather beautiful illustration of what I would assume is Shangguan Wan'er of the Tang Dynasty, akin to TangZu's previous model, the Wuzhu Tian, which is also a featured prominent figure in the Tang Dynasty. Wan'er SG can also be seen printed at the bottom along with the words Single Dynamic Driver and in-ear monitors. TangZu's logo is also seen on the bottom right. Inspecting the sides of the box shows them to be generally clean, with TangZu's logo seen on both the bottom and top sides, and the indicator to what color your unit is on the right side. Flipping the box around shows beautiful patterns spread out around the surface of the Wan'er and the Wan'er specs along with TangZu's contact details. Here are its technical specifications in detail based on the box. Opening the box greets you with a cloth printed with the same artwork at the front of the box. Removing this cloth then finally reveals the IEMs themselves along with a patterned enclosure. Wan'er can also be seen printed on the bottom with the beautiful Chinese writings on top of it. We'll take a look at the IEMs in depth later, but let's inspect the box a little bit more. The IEM enclosure then splits into two pieces, one foam, which also has the patterns, and another somewhat hollow cardboard material. We are then greeted by the accessories and cable box nicely laid out once we've removed these pieces. Pulling these boxes out and opening each section up, we get a white 4-core cable and 6 pairs of tips in total. 3 of these tips are stated to be vocal tips, and the other 3 to be balanced tips. Sadly, a carrying pouch is omitted from the package. I personally loved the unboxing experience of the Wan'er, as it was very different from many of the boring white boxes that littered many in this price range. I would say that using Oriental, specifically the Tang Dynasty based art for their packaging, puts TangZu above many brands in terms of product presentation. The satisfying presentation of each item is also not a surprise with TangZu, as they can make a very good first impression with their IEMs that they've stayed consistent with for all of their releases. I will say though that this is definitely not the most ergonomic or space-friendly container out there. While I do enjoy the well thought out packaging, I would say that there is a lot of space in the Wan'er that is wasted space. The cable I can still understand needing a bit of space to avoid any bending or misforming during the distribution, but the tips? They don't need to have this big of a packaging. I understand that it's to complement the large box, but I really feel like TangZu could have made the box just a little bit smaller, especially since it does not come with a case. I would really highly suggest minimizing the footprint of the packaging if there won't be a lot to unpack. Anyways, let's move into the IEMs themselves. Starting with the cable, it's your standard 4-core OFC 5N cable of about 1.2 meters in length, which is, according to TangZu, a 2-pin 0.78mm connector, which is quite odd as seeing as it's formed and shaped like a QDC connector, with the pins being sleeved. It's nothing really special and it's quite springy and memory prone, but otherwise, it functions well enough as a cable, and I don't really have much to complain about the cable, especially for the price. The jack is your standard 3.5mm gold-plated jack housed in plastic where it tapers off to the white 4-core cable. The splitter is the same material, plastic, as the jack and does not include a chin cinch. The cable splits into the 2 core strands that lead to the quote-unquote 2-pin connectors housed in clear plastic. The IEMs themselves are a similar story, with the build feeling quite cheap but saved by the quite aesthetically pleasing presentation. The faceplate includes a nice white pattern on my unit, while the black one also has a nice but different pattern. Clouds can also be seen printed in shiny gold color on the center and near the nozzle side. The pattern and designs are on a layer under the main clear faceplate, which is quite interesting as it allows for the design not to fade out over time. Inspecting the Wan'er further, we can see the 10mm dynamic driver being presented clearly through the shell. We can also see the 2-pin connectors which protrudes out of the shell. The 10mm dynamic driver uses a PET diaphragm with an impedance of 20 ohms and a sensitivity of 107 dB at 1000 kHz. The nozzle is about 5mm in length and width, which should fit most silicone tips. The fit of the Wan'er is very comfortable, although not very premium feeling due to its plastic build. I did not sense any pressure buildup or driver flex on any of the included tips or my personal tips. This is a big plus as I find driver flex and pressure buildup to be a very big game changer, not only to the fit, but also to the sound. Overall, nothing really special with the cable. I really do not fancy these kinds of braided cables as I find them to feel very cheap and very difficult to store. It also has the instance of irritating my face in the process. Thankfully, Wan'er's cable did not irritate my sensitive face, but still suffers from the aforementioned issues of springiness and being memory prone. The same can be said for the IEM, but I find that placing the design under a layer is a very smart decision, as it allows the design to be retained for a much longer time. You can at least breathe easy knowing that the patterns won't chip or fade over time, which is good for the aesthetic longevity. For this, I shall give the Wan'er a 6 out of 10 for build and comfort. Finally, let's get into the sound impressions. Before we get into the sound impressions, the tests will be done on a Venture Electronics Megatron, Zishon U1, Not by VE Abigail, and a Poco M3, which is a non-hi-fi source, through Hebe Music, both exclusive and shared mode for mobile, and MusicBee, also exclusive and shared mode for PC. My test tracks also can be found below in the description. These consist of a mixture of pop, rock, funk, and jazz that I personally listen in my daily life. The Wan'er sports a neutral balanced sound signature. It has an impedance of 20 ohms and a sensitivity of 107 decibels at 1 kHz. It can be driven by a smartphone, but having at least a dongle DAC can improve your experience if you find the sound to be too flat. Starting with the bass, I would say that it falls in the middle of being a bass head and bass shy, as it has a clean but impactful bass presentation with a slight emphasis on mid-bass over sub-bass. Sub-bass is present and has good depth and rumble, but not levels of bass that a bass head would be satisfied with. Mid-bass is well detailed and textured while still being clean enough not to muddy or bloat the mid-range. It's punchy, but not overdone. It's just about the right amount of bass for most people who don't like too little or too much bass. I would give the bass a score of 8 out of 10 for being so clean yet impactful, especially for the price. Moving on to the mid-range, I would say that this also falls in the middle of mid-centric and recessed in presentation, as I found the mids to be sufficiently forward without having a specific emphasis. Its tonality is also rather natural, with minimal coloration to how vocals and instruments are presented. Lower mids have a good body and nuance to it, but does not sound overly warm or thin. It, however, can sound pretty recessed or pulled back on busy tracks. Upper mids, on the other hand, is forward while not sounding harsh or shouty. Vocals and instruments have good clarity and detail while being presented in a neutral or balanced way. Vocals never sounded too artificial, while instruments have good positioning and clarity. Overall, a very well done mid-range, but can suffer from congestion, especially from the lower mids. Not necessarily a deal breaker, but I'll only be giving it a score of 7 out of 10 due to this. Moving on to the treble, it falls on the smoother and more laid-back presentation. I would put it closer to laid back without sounding too dark. Starting with a lower treble, it follows the upper mids, but bumps up the clarity a little bit to bring out some of the instruments and vocals a bit more. Both vocals and instruments have a nice forward quality that brings out the nuances without sounding harsh or shrill. Just like the mids, it sounds quite natural. Middle treble, however, takes the emphasis a tad bit, as I found certain instruments, especially percussive instruments, taking a hit in clarity and sparkle in this region. Hi-hats and cymbals lack the sparkle that I enjoy, but they're present enough and detailed enough to bring out the nuances in instruments. The upper treble is rather relaxed and enjoyable, which surprised me as I'm normally all about that post-10K sparkle. It's an inoffensive, laid-back upper treble in presentation that it's inoffensive and it takes a hit on airiness, but also makes it less fatiguing for long listening sessions. Instruments still have that nice echo, but lack the treble shimmer that I really look forward to in vocals and percussive instruments. Overall, though, I found the treble to be a bit too laid back for my tastes. However, it was enjoyable enough for me to really enjoy the nuance of instruments and vocals. But again, due to that kind of subdued mid-treble, I can really only give it 6 out of 10. Still a good score though. Let's move to soundstage, imaging, and separation technicalities. Wan'er's technical ability is just about expected for the price. Stage is average with pretty good depth, but just average width and stage. The treble could be to blame for this. Separation and imaging is also quite average, as the Wan'er really struggles with truly busy tracks, which is, again, to be expected at this price point. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Now, let's talk about gaming performance. I genuinely enjoyed playing games on the Wan'er. Story and environmental based games are pretty good, as it's able to do macro details quite well while still being capable enough to really add character on the specific audio cues. Cars and Need for Speed Payback purr with a satisfying rumble and timbre, but do not ride or not ridding the sweet sound of the turbo and screeches of drifting. It doesn't immerse you like headphones or especially speakers do, but it's energetic enough to make the engine sound alive. Environment-based games like Stray offer a very satisfying but not really expansive or highly detailed experience. It can give justice to many of the minute details. But where the Wan'er really shines is esports. Due to the emphasized mid-bass, footsteps are quite audible even from a very far distance while not being too overly emphasized to muddy up the mid-range with little details. As per, it struggles in chaotic moments where many things are happening all at once, but it's well tuned enough that you should be able to avoid those chaotic moments even before they happen. Or, just get good. The Wan'er gets a 3 stars out of 5. On multimedia performance, movies sound quite good on the Wan'er. Low notes and rumbles are present without being too overbearing, so you really feel immersed in the film, while the relaxed upper treble really help with some films with aggressive and harsh upper mids emphasis like for gunshots, explosions, and the like. What I was really impressed with was how well the Wan'er renders vocals on the likes of Christopher Nolan films. His movies are infamous for having very difficult to understand dialogue that the Wan'er is able to present quite clearly. But again, we're talking about an in-ear monitor here. It can't give you the widest film-like or theater-like expanse that you expect from films. It also doesn't have enough rumble to really feel the bass, if you know what I mean. So it lacks in quite a lot of aspects, but $20. It's extremely enjoyable for what it is. But I can only give the Wan'er 3 stars out of 5 as well for this. Let's compare it to similarly tuned and price set. First, the Sol Notes Zero, the current set to beat for $20. I was able to compare this recently against the Wan'er, so I'm only going to be stating this off of my impressions when I A-beat them. The Wan'er fights toe-to-toe with Zero in overall performance, with I would really only argue that the only reason why you would get one over the other is for the micro differences and the aesthetics. Zero has a leaner bass with a more elevated treble, while the Wan'er has a thicker, more textured bass while being more laid back on the treble. Their technicalities are about on par with each other, and I would really only say that the Zero slightly edges out the Wan'er in staging, as it's a brighter, more airier presentation. Fit-wise, I would also say they're about the same, but I would give this to the Wan'er, as for some reason the Zero just didn't properly fit into my ear. I'd personally pick the Wan'er over the Zero in aesthetics and fit, but sound-wise, I'm leaning more towards the Zero. Next, the EDA Balanced. The EDA Balanced is a more U-shaped tuning compared to the more neutral balanced Wan'er. Bass is thicker and punchier in the EDA Balanced, but it also bloats the mids and makes it a bit too recessed. The treble is quite debatable, but I would honestly put my money on the Wan'er, as the EDA Balance has some graininess in the vocals and some hints of sibilance and, sharpness in the mids to upper treble. Technicalities are also similar with the Wan'er, but it edges the EDA in basically overall tonality, which makes the tuning also less, the EDA's tonality kind of messes up its technicalities in a way, but the Wan'er feels and it just sounds a bit more technical with how smooth and natural the tuning is. In total, the Wan'er gets a score of 32 out of 50, which is honestly quite insane for a $20 IEM. But where does the Wan'er fall in the current budget segment? I personally think that the Wan'er is one of the best options you have if you're wanting an all-rounder IEM or new or beginner to the portable audio scene. Its neutral balanced tonality allows it to be versatile for most genres, while its cheaper nature won't make you instantly regret your purchase. But let's be real, it's not a perfect IEM. To achieve such a quality of sound, the build and accessories had to take a hit. Technicalities are also not the best, as it has the tendency to struggle on busy tracks and staging really isn't the widest. But $20, man, what more can you ask for the price? And the fact that it stood by the giants that defined the meaning of budget shows the potential that TangZu has in creating an IEM that can redefine the market. It's a wonderful addition to the lineup of many solid IEMs that we can look forward to TangZu, and a solid option if you're an audiophile on a budget and want a great all-rounder IEM that doesn't break the bank. That is the TangZu Wan'er. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is my very first video review, and I'm honestly really stoked about it, because like I told myself that I really wanted to create a video for reviews, because again, you know, you guys know how long my reviews are, and it's kind of a pain. But you know what? This is an opportunity of trying something new, and I'm just really happy that I finally pushed myself to create a video. So enough with the whatevers. Thank you so much for watching through the end. If you want to visit my Facebook page, I'll put it down below. Again, my playlist is also there. I'm also going to be placing a non-affiliated link if you want to get yourself a Wan'er on the bottom, or in the description below. And yeah, I guess that's it. So,